Hello and welcome. I'm Michael DiMartino, and this is Golden Road TV and Radio. And kind of happy to start getting the wheels moving again. Obviously, a lot of us have been quarantined after the few months in relationship to COVID. But we have a great small live broadcast for you today with a watch party rebroadcast later. This is actually someone I've worked with several times in the area who is really a great person and very dynamic as far as actually educating the community. So in just a moment, we're going to introduce Penelope Sullivan and her guests. So thanks for tuning in, and again, spread the word. Golden Road TV and Radio on YouTube. And Penelope.
Hello, everyone. I thank you so much for joining us. This is the Freedom Love Project with Boots on the Ground. And I want to thank you, Michael, for giving us this opportunity. And I want to give such a warm welcome to Dr. Miriam Rahaf, coming straight to us from Manhattan. And hi, Miriam. Thank you so much for joining us. Your voice really spoke to me as a very powerful example of what the true potential of being a medical doctor can be. You are a triple board certified. You have your board certified in internal medicine as well as palliative and hospice care. Then you also have a certification in functional medicine and acupuncture. And I feel that you are really right there. We here are in a small Northern California town. I believe we've had, as of today, 51 cases of COVID. So we really are in this bubble. And I really wanted to expand this conversation to go to places like New York, where we're seeing these very large numbers, via the media, and get this very real, down-to-earth, firsthand account of what is happening. I'd love to hear what you're seeing there.
Thank you so much, Penelope, and also Michael for hosting this conversation. I'm really grateful for the connections that we're forging precisely because of COVID-19, this pandemic, and how it's affected each one of us across the globe. It's really a monumental global upheaval, and what gives me a lot of strength and hope is the ability to connect, people with their voices from around the world. Michael, who's been creating independent media for a number of years, just in time to really give us a platform to really discuss our experiences of COVID-19, you in your community in Northern California, and me in the heart of Manhattan, which has been a COVID epicenter. So thank you for that beautiful introduction. I think I wanted to add a little bit about what's really happened to me as a physician is that just over 3 years ago, I opened my own center, and I did that as a medical doctor who was looking for a way to practice medicine to really empower people to reclaim their innate ability to heal, to reclaim the knowledge that I had accrued over time through hospital training and prior to hospital training, studying natural medicine. Also, I studied traditional. I think this is an important piece to mention, that my coming into medicine happened while living in Thailand in the 90s, where the AIDS epidemic had just really been realized as having burgeoned. So it was a time again where there was this disease that was new to the Thai community. It had already, been a struggle in the United States in the 80s, and we see how we're connected, around the world in dealing with the emergence of a disease and our societal response. And I grew up in New York City in the 80s and then wound up in Thailand in the 90s. And so that was, I think, a very eye-opening experience for me to see and feel again, although I was too young to be part of a medical response to AIDS in the 80s. I was in high school, and I joined and then became a leader in my high school's organization. We started a AIDS awareness club, and I was living then in the suburbs of New York City. We would do fundraising, bake sales, and then contribute that money to the gay men's health crisis and take part in city events such as the AIDS walkathon that we had here, and there was an AIDS dance-a-thon. And I had the sense too then of there being a really big problem, but the sense of meaning and connectivity and empowerment, even as a young person, as a high school student, aged 16 and 17, walking and marching with a really diverse community through New York City, and going to we had this event, this AIDS dance-a-thon, and we got sponsors for the hours that we danced, and Cyndi Lauper performed and Madonna performed, and it was this sense of coming together as a community. We could be greater than the sum of our parts, and our voice, people who lent their voice to this effort could help us make change. And so I think that's a spirit I carried with me, actually as a high school English teacher to Thailand, where I discovered that Thailand was in the throes of something that was already somewhat familiar to me in some ways. And I got really attracted to a project that I learned that was taking place in the upper north of Thailand that was trying to identify traditional healers in the community and create a network of support for people living with HIV. And as I earned my daily bread doing grant writing for this non-government organization that had engaged in this project, I wound up spending time with traditional healers, and I also wound up spending time with people living with HIV. And I learned that part of what they taught me was the comfort in coming together as a community and people reaching out and just figuring out what we could do, what can we do. And then my journey became, well, what can we do? I know there are medications available in the Western world that were still on patent and not affordable to people in developing countries. So I got a sense of kind of disparity between, pharmaceutical that is a for-profit industry and the kind of distress and despair of people, and then how they pulled themselves out to a certain degree, not everyone, but the people who were able to come together and looked to what was within their own culture, within their own resources, within their own reach, be it plant medicine that was naturally antiviral, be it spirituality, be it the coming together of communities. So I think that's an important thing to mention as a framework for how I came into medicine in the first place, and how that really is echoing in a really profound way around my response to COVID-19 in recent months within my private practice. So my private practice, I think, is an extension of the spirit of yes, we can. I did my residency training in the Bronx, which is the sickest county in New York City. It's also very, very heavily affected by COVID-19 right now. And I saw, in my medical education and then in medical practice, how amazing and powerful response could be to emergent situations. When someone has cardiac arrest, when someone is septic, when someone has a deterioration of their diabetes and their, and then we bring them back to life, right? So those extremes of pathology and the power of acute care, applied correctly. So I think, as all physicians in training do, and not just physicians, nurses and respiratory therapists and nursing assistants and LPNs and all of us who, came together to take care of patients, that I couldn't ignore the huge burden of suffering of chronic disease that we all bore witness to and experienced. And I think that was part of the journey into hospice and palliative care, was what more could I do to alleviate suffering? We also, as we train, take care of people in outpatient medicine, and I would get asked questions like, is there anything other than the medications that have been prescribed? Is there a diet? I actually heard about these supplements. Do you know anything about it? Those questions would really start coming through, and that was the journey of how can we swim upstream, and what tools, if people also aren't responding well to the medication. Someone said to me, I'm super constipated. Is there nothing I can take besides these pills? And I'd say, well, you're actually, we took care of a lot of African American, Caribbean American, and Dominican and Puerto Rican humans from those countries. And so let's say I'm speaking to my wonderful patient from the Dominican Republic. I'd say, well, you have papaya as part of your traditional foodways, and they're like, yeah, I love papaya. I was like, well, papaya is an amazing enzyme-rich food that can really help with digestion, and maybe instead of taking that pill, you can try to commit to eating, a piece of papaya with every meal, or at least, once a day, and see if that helps. And that would be something that resonated with them, and a tool that was within their tradition, within their reach, that could change how they felt. And I felt like that was a huge need, and that I needed to, try to amplify people's ability to go within their own tradition, within their traditional food ways, within the wisdom, within nutrition, and try to create health within these sustainable practices that were familiar to them. And it kind of was this feeling that the power was within us to make choices. And if we were eating enzyme-rich foods that not just helped us move our bowels, that is also rich in vitamins and has other value, because it's a whole food. It's natural. It comes from, and there's nothing more perfect than divine design that is within all of us. So anyway, so that's like just a very broad framework, and then I'm gonna kind of step in. So when over the past, so yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful that you had this natural inclination towards health. I would say that within this entire COVID narrative, we haven't really heard that much from the holistic population, the holistic medical doctors. And as far as giving us tools as to what we can do to, or even speaking to that the expression of disease is worse with those with pre-existing medical conditions. And so within your schooling, did that come more from you, that inspiration to learn about natural health, or was that within your, did you see that, where you presented that with your education?
I think it was an orientation that I acquired. I think it goes back to this background in Thailand and the famous adage that necessity is the mother of invention, that I was acquiring my identity as someone really curious about health and healing. because at that time I wasn't formally educated in medicine, but I felt kind of connected to this idea that there is this huge group of people who are incredibly frightened and suffering, and that this affected all of us, that HIV was something, for example, that affected me as a young person in New York City. It affected, you know, Broadway artists, and it affected people in the arts. I felt the impact of that, and that here I was again in Thailand, literally completely across the world from New York City, and feeling the impact of that again. And that it was the same echo. It was a decade later, and that same fear, when there's something new and it's a pandemic, the first thing is this huge wave of fear, and some people shunning precisely the people who are sick, and how that adds an additional burden to the people who are directly affected by the disease. It's not just confronting your own mortality in the case of HIV and the natural history of HIV, but it was also the isolation. And I think there's so many echoes of that now, this huge response to fear. And what I also learned is that there was a tremendous amount of comfort for my dear friends and teachers living with HIV just by community coming together. They described the isolation as one of the greatest burdens of the disease, the loss of human touch, and so I think I have it's like I've been here before. I feel like when COVID happened and all the messages of fear were really washing over everyone, and this idea of us going into isolation, I know there's this core part in my heart that knows that isolation ultimately isn't the right answer to healing, right? That if we're talking about healing, and of course that's really what I signed up for. I signed up to be a physician, to really alleviate human suffering, and to love others as I would love myself, and to follow the golden rule, and to love my neighbor, and to step forward, a life in service.
To COVID, what has it been like as an integrative physician working with COVID? Has that been well received by the community, or is that are you more rare right now, would you say, or unique?
So initially I kind of gathered my team. I wasn't aware necessarily of what other integrative doctors were doing. I was first just checking in with myself and my team. Rightfully, teammates were expressing a lot of fear, and we had a gathering here in the office discussing concerns, because we don't live in isolation. It's not just my philosophy. I'm a mother of children, and they have schools. Teachers were afraid, their parents were afraid. The staff here have families. They're commuting. Is it safe to take public transportation? Roommates living in apartments who have other jobs outside of medicine. We can't isolate ourselves from our general communities. We live within communities. We live within a social fabric. And so the first thing I said to my team when they were expressing a lot of concern, also just uncertainty. How long would we be able to operate? How would we even get into work? Would public transportation continue to function? What income security could I offer to my team as a tiny operator in a little boutique practice? And my answer was that I could not offer certainty in terms of what, we didn't even know if people would come in for treatment. Everyone was canceling their appointments. So what I said to the team was, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. What I do know is that I have a sense of what I feel the right thing to do is, and what I feel the right thing to do is to show up. And I also want to express a lot of love and compassion for everyone going through so many difficult emotions, and I understand the fear. my own training and my own personal choices, and the privilege of my training, the luxury of my training is that I've had practice in confronting my own fear. It's scary when you're training in medicine to see someone have a cardiac arrest, or to have their heart stop and to need to, run a code and try to, revive someone. It's scary when someone's having a seizure. It's scary to see someone bleed. It's scary. And our training prepares us to confront our own fear. And I think it's not necessarily that different from maybe military training in some ways. And we talk about doctors versus civilians. I think there's a reason for that. I also think that people who work, for example, firefighters who are trained to run into a fire, I think there's like a psychic shift around what we're called to do and the responsibility we take on, like the psyche we take on as physicians. And I think that's really heavy. And I think it comes also, it comes with a huge responsibility. And I think also, I've also really, I think physicians do enjoy a role of respect in society precisely because of that training, because it is done very much in a spirit of service and sometimes sacrifice. And I think, or often, I think we really see that in the spirit of physicians who have served on the front lines, and many, and not just physicians. I want to expand this to pay tribute to all of my brothers and sisters in healthcare that, tragically have also, many of them have paid with their lives in this era of COVID-19. So all of that is really, really real. So let me just reel this back to our practice and working within the integrative space. Working within the integrative space over the past several years, both in the practice that I started and in the two other practices that I worked in prior to starting my own, was that we had tools that can be successful sometimes even when the incredible arsenal of tools that we are afforded in our medical training weren't enough to answer the need of an individual human. And so what integrative medicine to me is not conflicted with allopathic medicine, it's an expansion. And I think that's really important to say, because I deeply love and respect all my colleagues. We're not against each other. I'm for. And if, and it's this idea of if a colleague gets stuck, they can call on me as a subspecialist, and I can wield my expertise to try to support them as a fellow physician and be a member of a team. And most importantly, to address the suffering of a human in front of me who's asking for help, right? So again, it's very clear to me that this is all always, this work is an incredible privilege and always done with that spirit of love and service that it's always been intended to be, and therefore for me it is the most, beautiful and meaningful profession to be able to be a healthcare provider. And so with that, I've had the incredible experience and good fortune of having sometimes a colleague be stuck or a human be stuck with a medical condition, and then we expand the menu, be it with plant-based medicine or selective IV therapy, or an expanded menu of diagnostics, because you rightfully said that some people more affected by COVID-19 have other medical issues or comorbidities. I think that's also true for the humans I treat with autoimmunity and with irritable bowel or inflammatory bowel disease, or chronic fatigue, or fibromyalgia, or multiple sclerosis, or cancer, or attention deficit, or weight loss resistance, or chronic pain. These are all conditions where sometimes people will get stuck, and I'll say, okay, let's try and figure out what's going on. And so combining different tools, you know, and there's so much to say about all of this medicine that I practice. It's such an expansive and incredible and thrilling field, because we get to really make an impact and swim upstream and change trajectories, and people's blood pressure goes down and their weight normalizes and their pain gets better, and their tumor markers are going down. I mean, each time that happens, it's an absolute miracle. And we're always looking to kind of figure out what the factors are that have contributed to the success. And I think that's a huge area of need and exploration. And really an exciting space to be in, and it's really burgeoning. There's the functional medicine movement, there's naturopathic medicine, there's chiropractic, there's acupuncture, and my journey has been to continue and grow and expand as much as I can into these fields, or collaborator, you know. And so the work that you do, where you like deeply honor the natural power of healing, you know, plants as an herbalist, is like a huge part of the medicine I practice, or the expertise that I seek from colleagues who are herbalists, for example. Anyway, so having had success, for example, and now specifically I want to speak about viral illness, over the past several years, there are some viral illnesses, and we have, in terms of allopathic medicine, a more limited repertoire. And of course, this was also my background in dealing with retroviral illness, HIV. What were the things within the natural plant world, you know, that might make an impact, right? So this is something I've been thinking about, not casually. I've been thinking about this for the past 24 years, and trying to address it in some way. And so in this practice, we've had a lot of success using IV vitamin C as one of the tools in our arsenal. And I heard some reports coming out of China that was something that COVID-19 seemed to be responding to. So as I was gathering my team, I said, you know, what I would like to do is, if this comes up for us, first of all, I'd like to stay open, and if that's okay with you guys, that'd be great. If it's not okay, that's also fine. I think I'm okay with showing up and dividing my day. I'll work the phones, I'll do some consultations, I'll push some IVs if I need to. We'll like figure it out. And if you show up, whatever I have in the business account, you know, like I'll pay until I run out of money, but I plan on showing up and offering you as much income security as I can with whatever I have, and let's like do this. And my team is so amazing. They're like, yeah, let's do this. And they just showed up. And I work with just a phenomenal nurse practitioner, Danelle Alicio, who was like, okay, if public transportation isn't working, I'm going to get in my car. I'll show I'll show that my nursing license, and you'll write me a letter, and like we're just as essential as any other healthcare worker. And I'll pick up the admin team, and I'll pick up the other nursing staff, and like we're doing this, like let's do this. And it was like this group like moment of just rolling up our sleeves and saying we are absolutely in this together. And it was just the most heartwarming and amazing feeling to have this incredible team around me, and that we were going to do this. And so we showed up. Our entire patient list just bottomed out. People stayed at home, and that was fine, because we always check vitamin C, we always check zinc, we always check D, we always check selenium, we always check iodine, we always check heavy metals and make sure that people's liver is working optimally and thyroid is working optimally. So for the people who had already been working with us, we already had great communication. They'd write in and they say, okay, what else should I take just to be sure? And we were sending recommendations, and people were getting their supplements, or we were shipping out. Since things were going out of stock, we started shipping out, you know, some stuff. But I knew that our community was like pretty well set, you know, that we had done the work already to really protect people's immune system. And what was amazing is that we got a new kind of wave of appreciation and recognition for the work that we always do, being like, thank you so much for optimizing my vitamin D and my zinc and my immune system. And I'm so glad that I started doing this work of just taking a closer look at my biology and optimizing my systems just in time for, you know, people felt like they had this extra protection and this extra awareness. And it was amazing to feel that, like the not just that their own condition, whatever their goals were, but this additional awareness and this additional health literacy that just felt protective, not just of them, of their families. People who are members of our community were then expanding their knowledge and making sure that their kids were optimized and they were taking probiotics. I mean, it was just this like idea of like this expansion, like, and yet it always has a ripple effect when people do well. Like love and health can be just as contagious as fear and disease, right? So I felt like this incredible impact, this spread of love and health through our community, and then some other people started showing up, people who had heard about us. So the first couple who showed up with COVID-19, I actually know personally. They are from Ecuador, and I had spent a year in college living in Ecuador, and they were really, really scared. And they said, Miriam, can you help us? And I said, absolutely. Absolutely. Let's let's try. They said, we really don't want to go to the hospital. And so I was like, okay, let me check you. They came in, they had a fever. Their oxygen saturation was a bit lower, but not anywhere that would qualify them for hospital admission, which needed to be below 90% oxygen saturation. But also, interestingly, some of the folks who found us were actually have some fear in terms of immigration status and going to hospitals. So there was definitely a community of people who are with a question mark in terms of their immigration status. It's not my business as a physician. I'm here to treat people. I don't care about immigration status. But I think that was one of the reasons that people started showing up here and trying to avoid the hospital, because there was always a fear of going into an institution or somehow, so that was an interesting thing to see and feel. But the point is that was an opportunity for me, because they, were adamant about wanting to come here and not anywhere else. So it was kind of like a challenge for me to rise to the occasion and kind of prove what I had previously proven in other viral illnesses, if that could be true for COVID. And I was encouraged by the reports coming out of China. So, yeah.
To me, I have been somewhat frustrated in seeing these numbers of cases, like we have this many cases, but we're really not given the breakdown of disease expression and what the symptoms are looking like. Are these asymptomatic? Are they very severe? Are they more moderate? In your experience, what are you seeing with cases?
So my practice and what's going to be magnetized in my practice are people who are highly symptomatic. There were a few people who came in and said, listen, I just wanted to get, some IV vitamin C because it's good for me anyway, which it is, and just boost my immune system. In fact, that was one of the things that we did for every member of our staff. We all, each of us got vitamin C infusion. So each of us got, I think, 20,000 milligrams of vitamin C with some zinc and some B complex. And we frequently or invariably end our vitamin C infusion with something called glutathione, which is our body's chief antioxidant, so a glutathione push. And so I knew that my own team's vitamin and mineral status had been boosted. So there were definitely folks, including ourselves, who are asymptomatic, who were just coming in to kind of top themselves off, so to speak. But then what happened was, starting with that first couple who were really sick, they came in. It wasn't easy for them to come in. What I saw and what started emerging. So they were the first couple. I'll tell you briefly but this became the pattern. It was the story they told. And then the next day they felt so much better that they started telling their friends. And then there was, I think, a whole kind of group of amazing human beings who spread the word within their community. It seems like the story I got, both about the natural history, but also about the just the logistics of families living in close quarters and sharing resources, and maybe having 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 people in living within a small space, and that they were getting sick. Like someone works in food services, or someone works in transportation and have to go out and then get infected, and then the household, like that it passes within the household. And on top of that, there is this huge fear, right? So the huge fear that they were really confronting or just suffering with, that they couldn't necessarily completely isolate. I think also a certain socioeconomic status, of people who are working directly in food service or in transportation or in construction. And also I know this was happening with this, other with healthcare workers who, if they had the option, were isolating themselves from children and preventing that. But I think these were precisely communities. And I think a lot of communities who are more financially, economically vulnerable were the communities who were largely affected, because they didn't have the luxury of changing living arrangements, or of certain people not going to work. So that was really the community that started showing up. And so there was a huge amount of terror, there was a huge amount of stress, and people described, so here's what people are describing. They described a loss of sense of taste and smell, headaches for some people, sore throat, profound fatigue, muscle aches, and they said pain in our bones, like pain down to the bones. Some people with respiratory symptoms were describing just an incredible amount of chest pressure. And then there was a word in Spanish that people used a lot called desesperado, which is like hopeless. It's like, but I think it was also like a lack of air, like an air hunger, like an inability, it's not a specific word. It was more like, it felt to me like they were describing both anxiety and panic and air hunger and pressure. It was just this profound statement on suffering. And definitely was coming up on, so I wasn't seeing, I think later now, people who were at home were like, yeah, I definitely had some symptoms, but I was okay. I was drinking tea. I was tired. I think those are stories that are now emerging. Now that things are opening up, people are coming in, and now that we have testing, we have the antibody testing, they want to say, I just want to confirm that that's what I had. Or people are coming in who are not sure if they had it or not. I traveled in February, maybe I was exposed. I think I'm seeing more of those more ambiguous cases are showing up now that things are opening up. But in the moment, it was really the people who were scared enough and desperate enough to leave home were the people who were showing up in the practice. And they needed help right away. And they were afraid that they were dying.
And then when you were able to start treating them, how was the turnaround with that? As far as first of all, did you have to really apply a very rigorous regime for them? And then 2, about how many days did it take to turn it around?
Everything with, I had to approach, because we were all learning this, right? So this idea of the boots on the ground that you mentioned, that I'm going to show up, I'm going to do my best, and I'm going to take a look at this person. I'm going to listen to what they're saying and what they're seeing. And as I'm doing that, I'm also trying to study simultaneously, what is the pathophysiology here? And there was some pathophysiology that was emerging around how this virus seemed to be attaching to heme molecules on hemoglobin, and that iron was dislocating from hemoglobin, and so impairing the ability of hemoglobin to carry oxygen. And I was correlating that with this bone pain and myalgia and air hunger, and I was correlating that with the diffuse pattern that was showing up on X-ray of the ground glass opacities, as it was being called, that wasn't just in a location like a pneumonia, but this diffuse process that was all around the lungs. And people were describing, again, not so much localized symptoms, but this kind of diffuse fatigue. And so that made sense to me that we would need to kind of work on systems, right? So lowering inflammation. So vitamin C is both an immune booster, but it also is an antioxidant, and depending on how much oxidative stress someone is in, it just seemed like people were like we were giving a lot of vitamin C, and it was acting, I think vitamin C at high doses acts as a pro-oxidant. My feeling about what was happening in terms of treatment is that the body would recruit as much as it needed for its antioxidant defense, and to replenish the ascorbic acid. That's a natural part of surfactant, which is part of the lubrication of the functional unit of the lung called the alveolus, and kind of help heal lung inflammation. Because what happened was that, we basically went in good faith and said, well, we might as well try, right? Because people didn't qualify yet for hospital admission, or they said to us explicitly, no matter what, we're not going to go. So let's say if they did qualify for hospital admission, because we had a few cases like that, we said, sir, ma'am, we're really going to have to refer you to the hospital. And people would say, okay, then we're going to go home to die. We're not going to go to the hospital no matter what you say. And we're like, oh, geez, okay, then we might as well try, right? So that was the spirit in which our work really started. And we saw that, so again, we're giving anywhere between 10 and 20,000 milligrams of vitamin C. That was somewhat discretionary, looking at the size of the person and what they looked like and how sick they were. And the B complex, magnesium, zinc, we have to buffer vitamin C, so we're going to use sodium bicarb, and we use some calcium gluconate, and then the glutathione that I mentioned, some amino acids, and also on physical exam. This is the whole idea of me, being a trained clinician and looking at someone. And so on physical exam, what did their lungs sound like, and what was their body habitus? A lot of people clearly had some abdominal obesity, which is a sign of insulin resistance, and lots of people had a lot of amalgam in their mouth, right? So amalgam is about 50% mercury. And over the years, testing people, I see, because I screen for mercury and aluminum and arsenic and lead, because I have an expanded menu, I have an awareness of how those things can play into metabolic health. I know that when I put people on substances such as bentonite clay or chlorella, those are substances that help bind out heavy metals from the body, their blood sugars tend to get better. And so I was able to apply that knowledge based on physical exam, and make recommendations to people in addition to the IV, that I felt would be supportive of their overall health. So that's really kind of the initial approach that we took. So people got their IV, as I mentioned, and then depending on their physical exam and their description of symptoms, I would also make some recommendations about supplements to support, and also dietary recommendations. So I was telling everyone to avoid sugar, since sugar does not support the immune system, and to try to stick to foods that were immune supportive, or so food that was cooked, food that was warming, food that contained anti-inflammatory spices and herbs such as ginger, such as turmeric, doing soups, doing foods that were more easy to assimilate, and cooked foods being more easy to assimilate when you're sick, and then the IV, and then we were using a lot of minerals, selenium, zinc, iodine, vitamin D, vitamin C, also in supplementation to complement the IV. What we were really trying to do was trying to get people back home safely and not need to come out and do more IVs. And overwhelmingly, people felt much better the next day. after the IV, and then we're able to bridge to supplementation, and with a kind of reinvigorated sense of healthy eating and commitment to, bringing more fruits and vegetables and decoctions, herbal decoctions. And that was nice, I think, in the South American community, that's definitely part of like the culture of Ecuadorian community. They do what we call agüita, so oregano and ginger and lemon. That was all super comfortable territory to them. They were already doing steaming. A lot of people from that community were familiar with eucalyptus, and they're saying, we're steaming it in our house. We're trying to like clear our environment. I started suggesting also just explaining that a lot of the infection is through respiratory droplets. So if you're in close contact with people and you can't avoid it in a house, then you can do nasal cleansing and you can clear the nasal passages. You can use just salt water. You can gargle with. That's something that's readily available, and you can do gargling and you can clear the nasal passages. Or people who have not yet been affected in your household, try to get those preventative regimens on board. Try to share the supplementation with basic minerals, which are inexpensive, and vitamin C, and keep the other members of your household well. And the minute we were able to turn that around, it just took, I think, a tremendous amount of fear out of the equation, because then there is this message of like, oh, like we've got this. And as that was happening, that's when I started speaking out on social media saying, this is incredible. Like, we are able to turn this around. What I want to do is share this story, because I think it's a really important story for people to hear. Like, we can turn this around with natural tools. And it's great that we explore allopathic tools and pharmaceutical tools and whatever we need to do. The important thing is that we keep people safe. I was like, but in the community, I'm able to do this. And I kind of challenged media to pick up the story. I was like, I think this is an important story, that this is possible, that we've got this. And if we've got this, if it's possible that we've got this, it changes our attitude about this. It changes our interaction. It doesn't mean that it's not real. It doesn't mean that it isn't usually impactful, but how we respond to this emotionally really matters. And it means that it's safe. And by the way, it's also really important to note that the measures that we took here, in addition to hygiene and while people were symptomatic, my staff, we wore masks and we wore gloves, just like, but none of our staff, we didn't get sick.
I love that story, because I think, did you hear of Dr. Chang, Robert Chang? And he was in Shanghai, and I believe he had about 50 or so people that he was treating with high doses of vitamin C. And it was in an interview that I saw him in, and he said, you do not have to sit and wait in fear that this is going to come and get you. And I see that, and we can maybe speak a little to that mentality, that you become fearful of other human beings, and especially maybe perhaps if they're not wearing a mask. And what you're saying is that actually we have these tools, that we can take these steps, and that they, in fact, can potentially lessen and protect us against this, perhaps.
I mean, there were moments, when on physical exam, people said their throat really bothered them. So I was peering into the throats of people with COVID-19. Not that I didn't already trust the tools or the power of the tools that we have in the functional, integrative, naturopathic health space, but I feel like I've really proven it to myself, and proven it to our community. And I also want to state that, I was interfacing with people here, and then I went home to my own family, and my own family stayed well. And then, like, the building I live in, some people, got sick. And so they came into clinic and they were all able to continue to work. It was like, and then, I felt like there was also this kind of, like, the disparity between people who are like, some people felt like they were safe, they were at home, but they were still, they converted all their their food to like online, but like there are people delivering, you know, there's like the UPS and the postal staff. And so there was like this huge affinity that we felt like we became really friendly with our United States Postal Service worker who started dropping by our office and talking about what she was doing. It was like this, you know, it was like there was also this beautiful expansion, I think, of people who are the essential workers, you know, across the fields, and this affinity, like we were showing up, and I was going to show up for the doorman to my building and our postal service worker, and that we were really united in this mission to keep on going, and that I could keep my community safe. I can't tell you what an incredible feeling that is, and how much gratitude I feel for, you know, the humans who figured out that high dose vitamin C could be a thing that could help people. Because I'm, you know, I feel so grateful for you know, I don't know, like all these steps of all other humans have taken to lead me to this place where I could stand up and offer this here. It's been really joyful, and I think that that's the message that I really want your community to hear, is that even in the epicenter of this, and even amidst all the fear, there are million points of light, and that that I experienced the joy of people calling the next day and just crying and saying, "You're my angel." But I feel like it's my angels. It's thousands of angels who have handed us these tools and have somehow instilled in me this conviction that it was worthwhile using these tools, and that it made sense to use these tools, and then proved that we could use these tools, and not just to me, but every human touched by this, and then the expansion of that, right, to people who would have never really known what I do, you know, like the wonderful woman who delivers our mail. And I don't think the doorman in our building would have ever known what we do, except the doorman in our building got sick and I offered treatment, and I was able to all of a sudden, you know, our staff and like people who work in the building are taking reishi and astragalus and vitamin C and multi-minerals. And then again, like our doorman, he's so adorable. He was like, I actually went on a jog after he got sick, and then after I treated him, he's like, I actually don't think I've felt this well in years, and I actually went jogging. I haven't had the strength to like exercise in a really long time. He was like, this is absolutely amazing, you know? And so it's like taking people who weren't part of a functional or integrative or plant medicine model, and like having this really powerful experience of healing through this. And you know, I think it completely changes an individual's relationship to this field.
Now, but I just really want to say thank you so much, Miriam. You not only bring this the holistic health piece, you really bring this sense of togetherness, that how the community can rise to this situation together, you know. And I see so much division and even friendships being lost. And I think that if we can remember the tools that you're talking about, we don't have to have that fear, and then we can perhaps come together more, right?
I feel that I think that was the gift of my beautiful teachers in Thailand, that they taught me the power of coming together, and that was one of the most healing things that anyone could offer. Right? It's a listening ear, it's words of comfort, and it's intention to be together. And that if we can not do away with fear, I think acknowledge it. I acknowledged it, certainly. I continue to acknowledge it. But be able, like, courage by definition is the ability to step forward through fear, with fear. And I feel that the rewards of us as our little community here, and that's magnetized so much joy and strength. I mean, we did what you're doing. We did some webinars just for our practice community, just 3 webinars to explain to our community. And so many people just expressed the incredible comfort of knowing it was possible. and me saying, I'm so glad that the work we did, especially for pre-existing members of our community, has protected you from the need to rush in and get treatment now. And people largely who have already done this work have really stayed safe at home. But just knowing that you have a backup, and identifying practitioners in your community or growing practitioners in your community, this is training that's available. This is a commons. This is this information, healing and medicine should be a human commons. It's not that I don't have a patent on this. You taking this is the gift for humanity. This is kind of, we all deserve to live healthy, vibrant lives, and we all deserve to live in joy and light and love and grow communities centered around that, and use precisely this challenge to not divide us, because it's true that an undivided house will stand. And I think we can think about this as a global community. I think we can think about this as a community in the United States. And I think if we can step beyond mask, no mask, hydroxychloroquine, no hydroxychloroquine, and say there's actually a diversity of tools that will work. I think there are amazing physicians working in the allopathic space who have precisely found the same thing, who started using a combination of methylprednisolone and anticoagulants and vitamin C, plus or minus zinc and hydroxychloroquine, and found that they are achieving the same thing that I'm achieving. I don't care about the pathway to achieving as long as we do no harm, because that's a Hippocratic oath, and we achieve our goal, which is helping people stay safe and recover and heal and be vibrantly well. I'm not going to argue about the tool, because the truth is what works, right? And so if my colleagues in the allopathic space have figured out what works, God bless them. I love them. I'm so proud to be of that community of people who step forward. And God bless my integrative colleagues. And God bless all of the essential workers. God bless all the parents fighting to keep their families safe and well and their children safe and well. And let's raise a generation of people who step forward in love and unity.
So much. I really I appreciate you so much. And can you just tell us where we can find you, your website?
Thank you so much, Penelope. I really hope that this has been helpful. I think, it's possible that other questions are raised through our discussion, and I think it might be really helpful and healthful for conversations to grow out of this experience, and maybe we can resolve some of these conflicts that I don't think are really conflicts. I think conflict is an illusion, and I think the greater truth is that we are we're meant to love. And also, one little thing is that what I've learned over the years is that the body has infinite healing potential, and our default is to heal. All we need is to be given the right tools. It's not me that's healing the body. I'm giving the body input, and the body, if it's the right input, the body will take it and heal. It's like our default. I want people to remember that our default is to heal, and our default is to love. And so if that's our default, we really truly have nothing to fear. We have the tools are here. To learn more about the work we're doing, you can check out my Facebook page, Miriam Rahav, RAHAVMD. You can look us up on Facebook. You can look up Rahav Wellness, again, RAHAV Wellness. We have a Facebook page, we have social media, Instagram, and we have our website. So if you just Google any of those search terms, you can find me yammering on social media about any of these issues.
Thank you so much. Thank you for visiting from us, New York. I know it's quite late at this point, so just lots of love to you and blessings to your family.
And that'll about wrap up another episode of Golden Road TV and radio show. I want to thank Penelope Sullivan for actually helping to facilitate Marion, an incredible guest here on the show. We did stream live to YouTube on Golden Road TV and radio, but we will be organizing with Marion and Penelope a broadcast of the 1 hour, exactly 1 hour video as far as a resource for community education and awareness. So thank you both of you for your great work. Thank you to all of you. I will say it's been lonely here. I'll show you. It's been lonely here in the studio. Not much has really been happening with the Golden Road TV and radio show, but this is actually kind of our rechristening of our summer of broadcasting. So again, thank you both of you. Thank you for all the work that you do and taking the incentive to help serve our community. And Golden Road, bridging the past with today for a better tomorrow. It's all about community and collaboration. Thank you so much, and everyone, blessings and have a great day.